Well, good morning. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you with us. Today I'm going to make calzone. Yes, that's the way you're supposed to say it. Everybody I know calls them calzones. So if I revert to that, just forgive me. Here are the ingredients. You can pause and write these down. And hey, if you like our videos, if you like our channel, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you click the little bell at the top right, you'll get a notice when I post new videos a couple times a week. Now let's get cooking. So calzones, or calzones, is really very much like a pizza. And so we're going to start out with a pizza dough. And I have my ingredients here. A tablespoon each of yeast and olive oil and salt, and a teaspoon of sugar. This is 1 cup of warm water, it's just tap water. And I have here 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. I may not use it all, but I have 2.5 cups measured out. So we're going to start by proofing the yeast. I don't have to, I have instant yeast, but you can use active dry. So we'll start with the warm water, the yeast, and the teaspoon of sugar. And then we're just going to let these sit for 5 to 10 minutes until the yeast blooms and starts to make a foamy top. Just a quick word about yeast. I use instant yeast in everything. I used to keep 2 kinds based on the recipe. I just use instant. I buy it a pound at a time. I keep it in the freezer. The last batch lasted 15 months. If you're using the little packets of active dry, you can just use 1 packet. See all that nice foam? A packet is 2 1/4 teaspoons full, but that'll work for this. Now I'm going to add the salt and the oil, and then I'm going to start adding the flour a little bit at a time. I don't have my mixer out. I'm just going to do this by hand. You can certainly do it in your mixer. If you do it in your mixer, just use 2 cups of the flour. I've got the rest of it out because I'm going to use it for kneading. And I'll just mix it by hand. It's pretty easy. You just want to get the little lumps of flour broken up. And I'm going to add this flour 3 or 4 tablespoons at a time, and I'll be back. By the way, when it started getting thick, I switched over to a spatula instead of the whisk. Sorry, lost a word. Just because it would get stuck in the whisk. And to add in the last bit, I use this scraper, which I could have just used the scraper to start with. But it really does well for working in the flour once your dough gets a little stiff. And I'm just going to add, I'll leave about a 1/2 cup in here. I'm just going to add it until it starts getting too stiff to mix it in this bowl. You can see it's not taking up all the flour, so it's getting pretty stiff. And then I'm going to turn it out here on my floured board, and we're going to start kneading. You can see there, getting pretty stiff. So now I'm going to put some of my flour out on the board, and I'll just use however much it takes to knead it until it gets to a good texture, not at all sticky, and just dump it out. See, it's very shaggy, not all mixed together. But we're going to knead this now for about 5 minutes, and I'll show you just a little of the kneading. I know you don't want to watch it all. But we'll just work it enough to get it to all stick together. You know, I really love using my KitchenAid for making bread, but some of these soft, easy to work breads, it's just as quick and it's less mess just to do them by hand. And I know lots of folks who watch don't have a really good mixer, so most any bread can be done by hand. Especially using this kneading method. This is Julia Child's kneading method that I learned a long time ago. It's really much easier on the hands. Let me get stuff out of the way. I don't want to have a big accident. And basically it's stretch it, pull it, beat it, make it back into a ball, and stretch it and beat it and put it back into a ball. Now I'm going to do this for about 5 minutes, and anytime the dough feels the least bit sticky, I'll make sure it gets a little bit more flour in it. So stretch it, pull it, beat it, put it in a ball. I'll be right back. So I've kneaded it about 5 minutes. It no longer feels sticky at all. It's very puffy, soft dough. It feels good. I'm going to put it in a ball, rub it around a little bit, get a little surface tension on it. I mean, there is a reason for this rolling it around rather than just I like to play with dough, even though I do like to play with dough. You're building some surface tension, which helps the rise. So I have about a tablespoonful or so of oil in this bowl. I'm going to just put this right in here, oil it on both sides, put a lid on it, and it'll take about 40 minutes for it to rise. You don't necessarily have to put it in a really warm spot, just room temperature. And while that's rising, I'm going to clean up this mess. So I have here I think it's a 15-ounce container of ricotta, whole milk ricotta. The recipe says 16 ounce, but this is close. And I have it in a strainer, and I'm going to mush it around because I want some of the whey to come off. I want it to be very dry before it goes into the calzone, or it will make it mushy, make your crust mushy. So just stir it around and let it drain. And I got a good bit of whey out of this. It was really, really wet. So I'll set that to the side. Here I have pepperoni. I'm going to use a little on each one, and prosciutto. You can use other meats if you'd rather. I have here some fresh mozzarella. Now this is very moist. It'll be difficult to grate, so we'll just crumble this up. I also want to serve some sauce with this. So this is my home canned spaghetti sauce. And I'm just going to add some herbs, some Italian seasoning, and some garlic powder, and serve it on the side. Calzones don't usually have sauce inside them. And I'll just show you this. This is how I prepared the mozzarella. I just crumbled it up. So it's been about 40 minutes. I'm going to put some more flour down here on this board, and I'll show you the dough after it has risen. And this is a nice, soft, puffy dough. And I just deflate it a little bit. Let some of that air out. And I'll roll this up and work with it just a little bit. It's a very soft dough. This is one of those I call bubblegum dough. It's the consistency of bubblegum. But I'm just going to mash it down and fold it back up into a ball so that I can separate this into 2 pieces. This recipe makes 2 pretty large calzones. It'll serve 4 to 6 people. And you could certainly just make that many smaller calzones, however many people you're serving. But I'm just going to make 2, and then I'll slice them after they're cooked. And I do want to weigh them, and you'll see when I get done. They didn't turn out the same size, even though I went to the trouble of weighing them to make sure. I apparently just rolled one a little bit bigger. So they were close. So I'm going to measure these and even them out. I had about 22 ounces of dough here. So I'll get them even, and then I'll roll one out and fill it. So I'm going to roll this out until it's about, I don't know, about a 1/4 inch thick. And it's just like, roll it out like a pizza dough. Get it as round as you can. I will tell you that when you're rolling this out, you want to kind of get the edges a little bit thinner. Otherwise, it gets difficult to make the crust, and the crust will get really, really thick. So just go around And you know, if you're one of those people that can throw it and flip it and all that kind of stuff with pizza dough, you go right ahead and do that. I just roll it out, works just fine. So then I'm going to start this with the prosciutto. And the first piece is always in a lot of pieces. But I'm going to put 2 of these very thin slices of prosciutto in each one. And remember, all the ingredients I've given you are to make 2 pretty large calzones. You can cut it in half if you like. And you know, you can buy pizza dough and not go to the trouble of making it. It's just really not a whole lot of trouble. So I just go ahead and make it. And by the way, before I started working with the dough, I set my oven to 400 degrees to preheat it. Now this ricotta is really rich and creamy. You want to put a lot in there. I mean, really just stuff this thing full. So you're going to end up putting about a cup of the ricotta cheese in here. And let me talk a little bit about seasoning. I don't put a whole lot in here. The cheese has a little salt, not a lot. The pepperoni and the prosciutto have a lot. And I put a fair amount in the crust. So if you want salt, you can. What I'm sprinkling over here is a little bit of garlic powder. You can use dehydrated garlic if you want to. And then I'm going to put a little bit of Italian seasoning on this, but I'm being very light on the seasoning. The cheese, the prosciutto, the pepperoni, it all has great flavor. You don't need a lot of seasoning, but do it if you like. And then a layer of pepperoni, and I'm going to make it a fairly thick layer of pepperoni. If you buy the pepperoni in the sticks, you can just chop it up. You don't have to slice it. You can mix all this together, by the way, before you start. The cheeses and the pepperoni and any other meat. If you wanted to use sausage, you could do that. Just spread this out. And when you get all the pepperoni you want, then put about half of this mozzarella. And you can see the texture of this. It's not like the dried mozzarella that you buy. I mean, I've tried to grate this before. It's very, very moist. It doesn't grate well. It just crumbles so easily, though. And don't really worry about overfilling this. It's going to stretch. The crust will stretch. So I'm going around the outside with a little water to make sure it seals really well. And then I'm just going to fold it over. And fold it over with the lip inside a little bit. You see, it's kind of offset. And I'm going to look at this. I didn't make a perfect circle, and that's okay. You probably won't make a perfect circle either. I'm going to trim just a little bit of the excess off after I've made sure that the crust is sealing by itself, that the water has caused it to adhere. So there we go. And I'll just get my little bench scraper, my dough scraper here, and trim off a little bit of the excess. Otherwise, you'll get a great big crust. It fold at the end of the crust, at the edge of the crust. So there you go. And then you can do this with a fork if you want to. I'm going to do a little tuck and roll there. And pull the bottom back up over the top. That helps also ensure the seal. And I think this is like if you buy them in a restaurant, usually this is the sealing method you see. So roll it up and pinch it, and roll it up and pinch it. All the way around. Now I've got a big cookie sheet over here, and I've sprinkled some cornmeal on it just to keep this from sticking. I didn't oil it. I just sprinkled a good bit of cornmeal on it, and that sort of helps raise it up and let it brown on the bottom. Doesn't look too bad. I'm going to set this over on the cookie sheet, and then I will do the other one for you. So all done. Now I've got a little egg wash here, and I'm going to be really generous with the egg wash. This gives it a beautiful golden color, plus it helps keep it crisp. And then we want to cut some vents in it, and I just find it easy just to use some scissors. You can just poke it with a knife if you want to. But this lets it vent so that it doesn't stay too moist inside. You know, that cheese, both of those cheeses were very moist cheeses. And you just want to make sure you get through the crust there. And when I get these vented, I'm going to put this in the middle of the oven. I have the rack in the middle, and we're going to cook it for about 30 minutes. After 15, I'm going to quickly take it out and turn it so they cook evenly. Then I'll show you. Doesn't it look good? It is good. It's really good. I'm going to let these just sit here and cool off a little bit, and slice it right down the middle so you can see all that yummy stuff inside. And you want to serve this with some pizza sauce, tomato sauce, your favorite, whatever you like, on the side. And I had to let it cool just a little bit because the cheese was just molten. And if you make smaller ones, you can just pick them up and eat them in your hand. Just hold them like a pie. But I'm slicing mine because this one's too big to pick up and hold. I'm going to dip it down in that sauce and take a bite. And ooh, it's so good. Listen, these are not hard. And if you want to buy your pizza dough, that's fine. You can make it. I think you could see by my illustration that making the pizza dough is not difficult. You can use that same dough for a pizza if you want to. I really hope you try these, and I hope you like them. And I sure do hope to see you again tomorrow.